But what's nice to start with is here is a ghost that I haven't brought you up until now. He's the missing one that I've been looking for, and I should have looked here. It's obvious where he would be, because down here in what is the corner of the Roman fortress of Iberacum, we find the ghost of a centurion. I think we saw him last year. It's the first time that we've seen him this year. So what a fantastic start. Here he is amongst the tombs. We'll talk about those in just a moment. But for those that haven't already seen the ghosts, they are sculptures of a kind of fine, meshing, wonderful, gritty, determined look on this chap's face. You see his helmet with a neck guard sticking out, so stopping you coming down with your blade and kind of cutting across the back of the neck. That's what the neck guard was there for. So we see him in full kind of Roman regalia. His big shield in front of him here. No pylon, so he hasn't got a spear with him. But delicately, in the breeze, his chin protects, his face protectors are moving. And he is absolutely fabulous to bring you. Here he is with his short kind of stabbing sword. So these swords were kind of used in kind of close combat. Get in there with the shield, and you'll notice as well the shield has got what they call a boss on it. And this is a metal disc, it's a bit dented. Somebody's had a pretty go at that. It should have been perfectly sort of cylindrical. And basically, we're like a fist. If you imagine you bash out with your shield, then that could really kind of knock somebody backwards. And then once you're up close, you can use your sword to kind of stab at them. So here is our Roman soldier to kind of start us off in and amongst the Roman tombs. And so it sort of seems sort of appropriate to talk a bit about the Romans' view of death. So these, by the way, these tombs that we're looking at here, that are in the bottom of the Roman Tower, have kind of been placed here by Victorian archaeologists, excavators, kind of found these. They would have been originally in crypts. You wouldn't have buried somebody in a stone tomb under the ground. They'd have been in crypts. Those buildings over time collapsed, and then archaeologists have found them and kind of retrieved them and placed them around, as you can see here, in a kind of decorative order, as you might say. What it does, of course, tell us is that these are Romans of high social status. You simply wouldn't have been buried in a stone tomb if you remember the hoi polloi. So it's very unlikely these are people from York. It's almost certainly people of the ruling elite, senior soldiers, legislators, people from the kind of the Roman community. Most people would have been wrapped and put in a burial sheet, but nonetheless, what's kind of interesting is, is thinking about the Roman ideas of death. I thought that'd be a bit of a kind of motif for today, just to talk a little bit about kind of ghosts and death and these things as we kind of work our way around for the last time of the year. And what's interesting about the Roman view of death is there's no kind of fixed view of what death was. There was a view that had largely been kind of lifted from the Greek belief systems. So if we trace sort of Virgil's Aeneid, that's a kind of great way of looking at it, where the hero Aeneas travels down to the underworld, Hades, as the Greeks called it, where he encounters Tartarus, or the grumpy man, and in the fields of Elysium, the kind of the lost souls, the souls that are waiting to cross the river Styx, waiting for the boatman, if you remember that story. And of course, in so they're in a form of purgatory. They're waiting for the final release. When they pass over the river Styx, then of course they become sort of settled in the underworld. But they do encounter a great deal of kind of discomfort, displeasure, there's an unease in the fields of Elysium. So anyway, let's kind of walk on, because I don't want to get locked in here for the day. And you can do a jump on camera. You are live to the internet. Okay. So we're going to walk on and go to the gardens, because I want to just try and get us into the edible gardens before they close off for the day. That will be fantastic. They may all be closed. We don't know exactly what's going on. We never kind of know, but we'll find something to look at. So we're walking around. It's a dark, gloomy day in amongst the ruins of the Roman fortress here in York, the fortress city, of course, of Iberacum, the capital of northern Britain. So let us leave the gardens, and onwards we will go in search of more spectres. So I do hope you enjoyed the our kind of opening shot there of the room. We've not brought him before, so that's kind of nice. I think that means that across, if you now watch the 3 tours, this is the 3rd tour, obviously, that we've now found all of the ghosts this year. It takes me a while. It's not a kind of quick 5-minute job. We'll come back and have a look at the bear in a minute. I want to get us around into the edible garden first if we can, if that's still open, because it's supposed to be up until 4:30. So I think that across the 3 tours now, you've had your money's worth. I think you've seen all of them. I could be wrong, isn't it lovely? The lights are coming up. Isn't that wonderful? So the lights are going to start to go down, and we're going to start to have a look and consider how these sculptures look in both low light and illuminated light, which I just thought would be kind of nice, because I say a lot of people have said, can we come in at night? What would it look like? And unfortunately, the garden doesn't operate in the evenings. Probably the costs and so forth, the staff and security and whatever. So consequently, the options for doing that are somewhat limited. But there was this window today, obviously with the gardens being open until 6, that I thought could come down originally in the daylight, but then we can watch the light go down and see what that does for these sculptures. And I've got my trusty head torch on as well, so we can explore that. I also, so gardens are open, that's fantastic. I also want to talk a bit about the ideas of ghosts. I've been doing quite a few ghost tours of late, both in person, online, and something about this time of year that leaves you to sort of thinking and considering, isn't it, about what do we believe, what are our experiences. I'd be fascinated to hear your experiences, whether there are any ardent believers in there, whether there's anybody that experienced what we might describe in the broad headline as paranormal, something beyond the ordinary, something outside our kind of normal expectations for what would happen, whether anybody has got their own ghost story. That's perhaps something you can pop in the comments, either in the live or below. And if I do my best to react to them as they come up. But I'll try and answer as well a little bit later on the tour. People have asked me frequently, have I ever seen a ghost? And the answer is yes, I have. Or I think I have. I've certainly felt one. I'll tell you that story in a little bit. But I think what we'll do is we'll just go around into the edible woods first, the edible gardens, and do that again. So we haven't been able to do that since the first time. So that shuts in about 20 minutes. So hopefully we can get in and have a nice look at some of our favourites. And isn't it lovely, the gardens? So the kind of light going down now. The leaves, of course, of autumn. Everything is sort of getting ready, transitioning now towards winter. And in a way, of course, nature is a version, isn't it? Do you know what I mean, of the ghosts. The plants, in effect, die, or at least the deciduous plants die. And we won't see growth again till the spring. This is the kind of last gasp. But I think it's fascinating that the beautiful palettes of autumn is, quite simply scientifically, is the end of photosynthesis. The end of the production of the kind of green then kind of gives way to this wonderful palette of kind of russet colours or autumnal shades, so that we get this absolutely magnificent set of shades, the reds, the coppers to the yellows, which we think about as colour, but actually is the absence of green. I suppose in the same way that black isn't a colour, it's the absence of light. And white isn't a colour, it's just totally light. That the leaves become, in effect, the ghost of the former selves, because what's been withdrawn is their life. So we're looking at something that is in death, or in the process of dying, but is beautiful, but in the full knowledge, of course, that it will be resurrected, it will come back again in the spring. So I think this idea of death as being something final isn't really been a preoccupation, an idea that's held much truck with humanity over the kind of period of our existence. For the most part, we've seen death as something that is transitory, a passing from one stage into the next, and that perhaps between those stages exists what we call ghosts, the paranormal. We'll come back to that theme. We haven't seen this little chap since our very first visit, about 6 weeks ago, and I think he is magnificent. He is a vulpine, a fox, one of the midnight visitors to the city. Those that are out and about late in the evening in York, many cities now, will frequently come across a fox. They're increasingly brave. They live amongst us. They live off our waste. With the various takeaways, the McDonald's, the KFCs, and all these kind of eateries, the kebabs, They know full well they don't need to go hunting mice or chickens. They can simply wait until people's discarded food wrappers will give them all the food and sustenance they need. They live alongside us. What's fascinating is in recent times of how bold they've become. At one time, they largely get hid away, the foxes. But certainly here in the UK, and I'm guessing elsewhere, they are now incredibly bold. Lovely, that's that dahlia hanging on. Lovely to kind of see. So we'll just do our best as well to kind of capture the last of the life. So again, flowers. It's another version, isn't it, that these that have flowered, gone back now, and we're not going to see really much life again until the spring. So let's go and have a look. I think we've got the artists over here, haven't we? So artists, of course, have been incredibly helpful to us, haven't they, in terms of capturing these states of transition. Whether that be the transition of daybreak, sun going up, sun coming down, whether it be weather patterns kind of coming across, snow, winter coming. These sort of temporary sort of transitions have been a kind of fascination of artists. So when we're thinking about the ends and death, the end of summer, the beginning of spring, and so forth, these are all aspects that are captured in kind of art. Oh, I don't know where the artist is. Well, come and find him. But before, we'll have a look at the museum. The musician lady, who I absolutely love. And again, music as well has been hugely influenced. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic with the bright lights? Of course, by the ideas of death, of transition, of passing, of funeral marches, of elegies, of what's the Mozart? What they call it when it's the piece of music for a funeral. It's all kind of wrapped up, aren't they, within this kind of ideas of how we can represent death and passing and sort of transition through other forms, through mournful music, through dress, throughout. And I love this lady. I love, obviously, the fact she's got a bow and a kind of violin, but also I love the ruffle about her neck. I think she's absolutely fabulous. And she looks lost in the music, which I think is just beautiful. And again, as we so often these, you have to kind of get the camera in the right position just to kind of capture the sort of mournful, sort of doleful expression that some of these appear to have. But in reality, there is no expression. The closer you get, they simply disappear. But there's something about this medium of shaped metal that gives us constantly the impression of an expressed view of kind of humanity. It really kind of comes through very loudly indeed, very kind of strong, without ever really being able to kind of put our finger on why it should be, because the closer we get, it's obvious this is simply twisted metal. It has no heartbeat, it has no warmth, but somehow the essence of humanity sort of shines through in this ghost. So at some point, I'd love to have a kind of conversation with the artist to see to what degree the things that I pick up on, that you guys pick up on, are intended. I suspect they are. But equally, I suspect that she's got her own ideas, and we may be sort of quite off-beam in some of the interpretations, the layers that we kind of put upon it. But perhaps that's the idea. Maybe the actors' ciphers, so that they are whoever we want them to, whoever it needs them to be. They are the ghosts of our kind of Christmas past, as Dickens would say. Perhaps reminding us, maybe of our mother that played a musical instrument, or whomsoever other people. Maybe that is the kind of the point, that they are ciphers that we can then project onto. And that when we look for emotion in the face of blankness, again, we are simply transmitting our own sort of perceptions, our own kind of emotions, our own emotional language onto these sculptures, because really, when we get up close, there is nothing there. It's simply indentations in metal. You can see there's nothing there, and yet everything that we need is present. I love this one. I think it's really, really beautiful. But I'm conscious of time. Hope you're enjoying the light. It's not going to, it's able to kind of do justice. I know these gardens, this bit of the garden is closing in. Oh, all right, 15 minutes yet. So let's go and find, if we can, the artist. 'Cause I thought he was around here. He may, of course, have been relocated. He may have moved. If not, we're going to look at our favourite in a minute, the knight. But we'll just have one last quick scoop round, see if we can see the artist before we do, because I really like the artist. So yeah, so the garden is very much sort of tucking itself up now for the winter. And this is an edible garden, whereas so everything in here, in some form or other, is edible. Now, not always sort of good to eat. A lot of things associated with well-being. So behind me over here, rose hips. Maybe some of you that remember rose hip syrup. It's a very, very sticky, syrupy kind of thing that gave kids to, I think, probably get vitamin C, was it? I guess. But lots of things associated with cures, because this garden has been created. We're in the grounds, obviously, of St Mary's Abbey. So the ruins, of course, just behind us, to remind us and to bring to mind the role of the monks as kind of botanists and herbalists. So it is a eucalyptus, I believe, over here. We've got down here, looks to be either a form of kind of thyme or maybe marjoram, I'm not quite sure. But everything around here, they're all kind of herbs and various kind of shrubs that are used in medicines, in balms, echinacea, St John's wort, all these kind of things in there. So here we are. We found the knight, which tends to be one of the ones that people kind of come back to again and again. There's something incredibly powerful about the knight. And he works beautifully for us as a ghost, because in this moment of supplication, in this moment of prayer, where of course his sword is forming a cross, he's thinking about atonement. He's thinking about death and forgiveness, and he's thinking about the next life. Because this is a martial warrior. This is a man who's going to war. But he wants it to be known by his garb. Look at his helmet. I don't know how well you can see from there. On his helmet, on his visor, you should be able to see a cross, or hopefully you can see a cross across his eyes, down the nose and chin, and of course the hilt of his sword. This is a Christian warrior. He is a man that is about to go to the Crusades. And he's doing so at the behest of the church. He's doing so to go and help recapture, we'd imagine, the Holy Lands, bring them back within Christendom, taking them from the Islamists that have taken hold of the Holy Land within the sort of the back end of the 11th century. But of course, in doing so, it meant he'd have to break the cardinal sin, thou shalt not kill. So how do you square that? How do you become a warrior of God? How do you go away and kill, maim, and be engaged in acts of warfare, and no doubt barbaric cruelty, but still save your soul? Well, this is where the monks came in. So our soldier knight has come here, the gardens of the monks, to pray, and to have them pray on his behalf, because it was fervently believed that people could pray for better outcomes. But if he did so, God may listen. But if a monk prayed, God was tuned in. They were on the same wavelength. These people, after all, spent their lives in prayer. So consequently, for a warrior nobleman, he could come to the abbey, he could pay a significant sum to the monks to pray on his behalf, and that as a result, his atonement, his penitence would be a great deal less severe, and he could probably work it off in this life, rather than having to go into the next life, into purgatory, or even risk hell and damnation. So this is where he is right now. He's thinking about his soul. He knows that the sword is his tool of death and destruction. But in creating it as a planted Christian cross, we are establishing a narrative about death, about atonement, about forgiveness, about what is actually acceptable in the name of faith. So, again, for these people in the medieval societies from which our knight comes, Death wasn't an abstract. Death was a constant companion. We're talking, of course, about an era of plague, of disease. There's no clean water. There is no, method of getting much by way of healthcare. If you get sick, if you get ill, the odds of you dying are pretty high. If you cut yourself, you get infection, good chance you're going to die. So death isn't some far off thing where today we might think, towards the end of my life, I'm going to. Death was something that you had to be ready for in the medieval era. So consequently, that was being ready in terms of sort of preparedness, but also the soul. Thinking about how and in what way you need to prepare. And of course, this is where the monks and the pastors came in, quite literally advising people on how to live their lives, how to ensure that they could do their very, very best to avoid either a lengthy spell in purgatory or, of course, going direct to hell. So the medieval mindset is obsessed with death. And in ghosts, what they believe is that these are the souls that are trapped in purgatory, but they have nobody praying on their behalf. So they're going through the worst kind of anguish, and they're coming back to the world trying to latch on to humanity to perhaps get somebody to pray on their behalf. That's one thinking about ghosts anyway. Because the church is a bit ambiguous. It can't quite make its mind up about ghosts. It certainly believes, of course, in an afterlife, but it also believes that everybody is kind of dead until the final kind of day of judgment and so forth. So it's a bit sort of woolly at times. But here, wonderful rendition, they've moved this monk. I think he looks fabulous just here. So we're up by the high altar. So a place where only actually the monks and the ordained clergy could have gone within the abbey. So we're right in the heart of St Mary's Abbey. So this spot here would have been the high altar. You'd found the tabernacle and everything to do with the act of communion would have happened here. So the laity would have been right the way down by that kind of archway. This then behind the choir screen was only for monks and the ordained clergy. So we shouldn't really be here, I suppose. But again, there's something about the capture. He seems lost in his business. Maybe his mind on a higher plane. Maybe he's cold. Maybe he's late. Maybe he's scurrying along. There looks to be something of a head down. It's like urgency in my mind about it. I think the folds in the fabric work beautifully here. We see him with his hands tucked in. And of course, they're tremendously cold. The monastery is really, really cold places. This wasn't a place where you have comfort. There'd be one room where you could go and get warm, but for the most part, they were really, really cold. So consequently, the robes, the cowl, tucking your hands in, the full-length heavy cloths was about being able to keep warm, to be able to feel yourself. And again, if we look upwards, we see, but we can't see on here, a very strange look about it. It looks like somebody's poked eyes in it. Unfortunately, it looks like somebody's been playing around with this sculpture. Let me move kind of back a little bit. The rain is coming down kind of quite hard now. So I don't know to what degree that's affecting your picture. But it really is so atmospheric to my mind. You just kind of come round the back and the side and you're going to get this sort of sense of him kind of half bent over, half kind of perched. It is a strange sort of position. He seems, as I say, lost somewhere. Maybe he's lost in this world. We do have a black monk that supposedly haunts these gardens. Jacindus, I've told you this story before. Jacindus was a novice monk next door to St Leonard's Hospital, who was a great big giant of a man. Everybody loved him. He was a larger-than-life character, but he had a weakness. His weakness was he loved to drink, and one day Jendos found himself in bad company in the town, and he ended up getting roaring drunk. He made his way back to St. Leonard's Hospital, but they were so appalled by his behaviour and his breaking of the vows, he was brought in front of the abbot, and the abbot didn't give him a second chance. He sentenced him to be walled up alive, which is an incredibly brutal punishment for this novice monk, but nonetheless that's what we're told happened. It's said that his fellow brother monks were in tears as they bricked him up. So well loved was Jendos, but nonetheless they carried out the order. And so then Jendos, in his stone tomb, could only reflect on the choices that he'd made, and in absolute despair, he leant on his haunches back on the wall, and believe it or not, the wall collapsed. He fell straight through into here, into the museum gardens. So museum gardens, of course, a Benedictine monastery, that was an Augustinian priory, so they were related, but not the same place. And people didn't know who Jendos was. They just kind of assumed that he was a new novice, so they embraced him. And of course, he was very popular. He was a very happy-go-lucky kind of guy. People loved Jendos. So he was brought within the community, and his second chance went really well. He adapted well to life in the Benedictine monastery, to such a degree that they gave him a new job. Now, unfortunately, the job that they gave him was that of the cellarer. And the cellarer was somebody who was in charge of the wines and the beers. So not an ideal job, it has to be said. And inevitably, you guessed it, one day down in the cellarium, they find him rolling around singing, drunk, incapable, on a charge, and in trouble. And so for the second time, he found himself in peril, brought before the abbot on this charge of drunk and disorderly, breaking his vows. And believe it or not, for the second time, the judgment handed down to him was incredibly harsh. For a second time, it was decided that his fate was to be bricked up in a stone tomb and left to die. So for the second time, Brother Jendos faced this terrible fate. And once again, finding himself alone, looking at starvation and a slow death, he fell to his knees in tears, and once again, the wall gave way. And this time he fell back into St. Leonard's Hospital. So, of course, the brothers, believing Jendos to be dead, believed him to be a ghost and were incredibly scared seeing Jendos. But then it just so happened that very day, the abbot of St. Leonard's died. And so the brother monks believed that God had sent Jendos back from the dead to take control of St. Leonard's Hospital. And this is what happened. And he became the abbot there, and he remained abbot for the following 20 years. This is a matter of historical record, this story. Bizarre as it sounds, it might be the strangest story you'll hear this Halloween season. But that one happens to be true. So when we last came over here to see this lady, I'm going to put a head torch on because it might just start to help now. To what degree that will give us a bit of illumination. To look at this lady here, I kind of rather sort of mistakenly put her down as just a general kind of servant. I thought she might be somebody to do with the workhouse, which is this building behind us over here. But apparently she's a Viking woman. And that's probably not my bad for not sort of spotting that. But there isn't really much for us to see and put a sort of time period on, because she simply is wearing the clothes of, a working woman. She has on obviously an apron, long skirts, headdress. Now, perhaps the plait may have given that away, but again, isn't that marvellous? We haven't gone around and looked at this time before. But isn't that wonderful that she has a plait? So I don't know how well that head torch is working, but I think it's giving an interesting kind of glint, because obviously where the light catches, we get the kind of the different elements. So again, what I really appreciate, with this one is the folds of the cloth, like how the fabric kind of works its way. So I'm doing my best to get a camera dry. So apologies if you can't quite get the angle that you're kind of looking for. But she's looking away from us. She doesn't really want to sort of greet us in any way. I'll come around the other side, but whichever way you come to her, she seems to be kind of looking away, turning away from us, if somehow she doesn't really want to expose the essence of who she really is, which is perhaps why I was mistaken kind of last time round. But I'm sure you'll see what I mean. There's sort of no way in. I mean, not least because if we kind of look at this round here, you'll see I don't want to tread over this, was it lavender maybe? Not quite sure what it is. So this wonderful sculpture, I like an awful lot. There's simply no way in, both physically and I think in terms of the way that she's been kind of constructed. That she's just giving nothing away. As I say, we're told she is a Viking woman, which is great. I'm happy to take that kind of face value. But other than that, it's very difficult to know what to think or say about her because she doesn't really give us much to work upon. But anyway, there she is. So the Viking woman of yours. So let's go around and see who else we can see. The lights are starting to come down now. We're sort of coming into dusk, which is a lovely time to be in the gardens. And I hope we're all okay. So the chat's gone very quiet. So either you're all very happy or you've all left. Either way, I'll continue. But obviously, if you are here, give me a little wave. Let me know that you're here, and I'm not just talking away to myself. So that'd be good. But it's lovely to have you all on. It's saying that there's about 38 on the minute. So is there a cat on the shed? Oh, well, that's a good question. There was last year, wasn't there? But no, I think we found the cat. No, we didn't. We found the heron, didn't we, at Lady Anne Middleton's? I can't quite remember where the cat is. I'm not sure if we've seen the cat this year, but I can't see. There certainly was last year. It was a good call, well remembered. It was right up here, but I'm not seeing anything right now. What I do know is that, oh, look at that. Isn't it lovely? See the lights coming through from St. Olaf's Church there. I think we've ever been down here and seen the stained glass illuminates. Let's go and have a look at that before we go past. To the Vikings, of course, this church was founded by a Viking, Earl Seward, for those literary types out there. And Linda's on to me, who teaches as well. Earl Seward, famously a character in Macbeth, which of course is a true story. And he leads the forces with Macduff to basically defeat Macbeth at the end. He's buried on the altar here in St. Olaf's Church here in York. He was the Lord of the North, the Viking Lord, was Earl Seward of Northumberland. And so this is his church, dedicated to King Olaf the Second, Saint Olaf, who's basically the king of the Vikings. So isn't that lovely? Beautiful light sort of coming through. I'll just try and put that through there without knackering it, so you can just get a nice sense. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So this church originally would have been founded in the sort of late, the early part of the 11th century, but largely remodeled in the 14th. So you're looking at sort of 14th century remodeling. Isn't it gorgeous? So that's St. Olaf's Church. We've been in there, if you remember. We went in there one time and there was just on my hand with a nettle. The things I do for you. We saw a little organ. Do you remember that guy? Remember that tour? Went in there and there was a man playing the organ for us. So we have been in there. And so it's all starting to come down now, the light, which is quite lovely. So let's go and have a look. So we'll go and find the bird, because we only saw that once. Remember, that was the one in the graveyard, funny enough, of that church on York Unlocked. So it always helps to go on a number of these tours with me, because it also links up. York's not especially big. What we just try and do is give you different kind of vistas and different kind of ways of seeing, different stories, different kind of periods to think about. Isn't that looking fabulous? We are, I know I say it so often, but we're so sort of fortunate just to have all this on our doorstep. You hear the bell tolling in the background as well. It just makes it all very, very sort of atmospheric. Just do a time check, we're okay. And these lights are really kind of coming up now, and it's a lovely time of day. The weather is not lovely. So for those who just don't know, by the way, the Ghosts in the Gardens here, this is an annual event now. It's the third year this has been running. It gets bigger each year. And the ghosts are these metal sculptures, of which we've seen about 5 or 6 now, have we? I think today. And they're scattered both through the gardens and elsewhere around the city. So we've seen them all now. This is a third tour. So if you sort of want to catch up on the ones you've missed off, there's 2 other tours about this, one in the city and one in the gardens. And it's just a fabulous attraction now, very kind of popular. That just needs me to go from strength to strength, and each year there are some new sort of additions that come in, which is lovely. So there'll be some that we've seen in previous years, but there's others that are kind of new each year, which I think is just marvellous. And I think it's a really, really good, interesting thing to do. So obviously it kind of starts with the theme of Halloween, obviously ghosts and spookers and paranormal, but I think it goes deeper than that. I think it's about this idea really of what's left behind when you've got a city or a settlement that has been populated for generations, for 2,000 years. What is left behind? Is it simply the architecture? Is something of the culture left behind? Does place have memory? If we're walking down a Roman road, does that bring us into contact with the ghosts of the Romans? Absolutely riffing aloud. I haven't got a sort of answer to this, but I mean, these are, I think, natural questions that kind of emanate from living in a place that has got a lot of history, and obviously appreciating that of all the people that have lived or spent time in York, only a tiny fraction of them are alive now. So we're quite literally amongst the ghosts, beneath our feet, the burial grounds, the burial pits, the place where people have lived, died, perhaps died in various battles that have been kind of fought in and around this area. So there's a constant sense of we're not alone. There's kind of more of them than there are of us. And I think that becomes part of the charm of being in York. Somebody was asking me the other day about some Americans on a virtual for a different company, asking about, people get scared to go out about ghosts. And I was kind of being sort of treating it quite lightly. But I think that for a lot of the point, people are rather kind of proud of York's heritage and association with supernatural. Not everybody believes, and some will think it's a good story for the tourists, but not much foundation to it. For others, it's a business, and for many, it is something that kind of they believe to be the case, which is fantastic. But I don't think anybody's scared to be here. It's probably one of the safest places where cities you can go. Not least because we have protector peregrine falcons. I don't know how well you'll be able to pick that out, but what I've got here is a falcon. It's coming down in dive. You can see how he's using his wings to brake. Wings are very clever things. They can both accelerate and be brakes. So in that case, what he's doing there is he's braking, he's putting on his air brakes, but he's coming to swoop in onto an unfortunate animal. It's a mini rabbit, baby rabbit, a vole, a mouse that it's seen. And believe it or not, we actually have peregrine falcons in the city. They were discovered about 15 years ago, I think, and they nest up on the north face of the Minster. So basically they treat the Minster as like a cliff face. And from time to time, you'll see startled tourists be sort of looking up at the Minster, and suddenly they'll see these birds swoop down and pluck a pigeon out of the air, or come after some other form of kind of wildlife. And it's brutal. I mean, they really come in hard, and they got razor-sharp claws. And they fly incredibly fast. But again, it's just part of being in York, is that we have just these characters. So here, again, is the tower. St. Olaf's we were looking at a moment ago. Does it look good? Do you like the sculpture? Is that working for you? I think it's wonderful. Foxes and falcons. Absolutely, Kathy, yeah. Yeah, all of kind of wildlife is here. So let's have a look who's down here. And of course, the garden beds that we come and spend. We come and see sort of lots of in the year. Not so much kind of going on now. Everything is getting ready to sort of go to bed for winter. But of course, the gardens will remain open. The leaves still falling. Leaves just blown into my face here. I hope you're enjoying the lighting. It's kind of relaxing, isn't it, this lighting? It's sort of nice. I don't know why I haven't could have brought us down here before kind of this time. I should do, really, shouldn't I? I should have done it before, and I shall again. I'm just taking advantage, really, of the kind of last of the light. In a month's time, it'll be pitch black at 4 o'clock, so we won't even really see this kind of light going down. But it's nice to be able to come and bring you. So I think, is this the bride? I can't remember who's here. Yes, we've got the bride. Now then, so you remember this story, I'm sure. This lady the bride that we believe relates to a story of a bride that was jilted. So we see it. Well, that light's good there, isn't it? That works. Light is perfect, Sarah. So again, I'm over a rope, but if I just, the rope's not very tight, so if I just push in and lean in a little bit, I'll try and get her. So we see the bride and the story that were told, and again, of course, it could be apocryphal, is that of a bride who's jilted of the altar, who's due to get married in the church, which of course is just behind us. And that when the husband, or groom, the husband to be, fails to turn up, she is distraught. She leaves the church, floods of tears, panics, runs off in the direction of the river, whereupon she slips, tumbles into the water, and despite the efforts of those that arrive a few moments later, they never find her. So it's believed that she haunts the church. We talked about her the other night, All Saints Pavement, which is where they believe she also turns up looking for a groom. The haunted bride of York has been seen on a number of occasions, not a very regular sighting this ghost. But has she got a ring back? She had a ring before, it seems. Oh, the ring is back. They've put a ring back. The ring was missing last time we came. So it's a sad sort of story, really. And I think somewhere around there is the groom, the best man, chasing after her to try and kind of remonstrate with her to kind of come back and no doubt to try and understand what has happened. But again, in this light, we can't really capture her sense, her kind of personality. We simply see a bride. But perhaps that's the point. When on the day you're a bride, do you lose your individuality? Does it enhance it? I don't know. You tell me, but there's something, isn't it, about dressing up as a bride that you become a bride rather than a person. I don't mean that in any misogynistic way at all, because obviously brides are celebrated the world over. But rather, is there a deliberate sense that you subsume your individuality to take on the mantle, the traditions, the veil, the dress, and so forth, of becoming a bride just for that one day? Or even just for part of that one day. Later on, obviously, those things will kind of come off and you can have a party and so forth. So is that the point? That she isn't, we don't have much by way of profile. The main thing is here that she is a bride. I don't know. It does look good, doesn't it, the light? I mean, the head torch, I think, is working really nicely. It's definitely capturing a better light than is available by the kind of naked eye. So if I sort of, turn this off, you wouldn't be able to see all that much. But I do think it's picturing it. And of course, again, with this double layering, and what she's done here, the artist, if you look closely, and again, I'll lean in, is the different mesh there. So it's a much, much smaller. You see the different mesh between the two? Hi, Ashra. So in effect, by using a different gauge, they've created this different kind of textural element in her kind of presentation. So again, it's really interesting that of how this artist is actually executing her work just through different textures, different kind of shades, different kind of shapes. Let's go walk on. Let's see who else we can see around. Let's see if we can find the groom. I can't believe we're on 4:45 already. It's been 45 minutes of me whittering on about next to nothing. But I did promise you I'll tell you about a ghost story. So I'll tell you that in a minute. We'll just have a look at this chap and then I'll tell you about my experience of ghosts, because it was something that has been asked to me many times. I kept saying, at some point I'll tell you that story. So today seems like it's a good opportunity as any to tell it. But so here we have, under the shadow of the hospitium, which is now a wedding venue, was once a medieval hotel, a hostel for pilgrims. This is where the holy, the pious would come and stay with the monks to pray and seek out that better outcome for their afterlife. So they wouldn't end up as ghosts. But anyway, before we do, here is, we believe, the best man. He has a look of purpose. If you look around, you'll see he's removed his hat, no doubt for so he can go a bit faster. He's certainly kind of looking a sort of sense of purpose, of urgency. He's chasing after the bride. The bride you probably can't see now over there. She's been subsumed by the darkness. We see, of course, his wonderful kind of bow tie. He's dressed up. So he does look quite the beau. He's dressed up very, very well. But we believe that he is, as I say, the best man rather than the groom. And of course, he's probably just trying to buy time, isn't he? He maybe thinks his friend second thoughts. He's going to be late. He's going to turn up any minute. Let's just keep things going until such time as he arrives. But it looks like he's setting off in a form of pursuit. There's an action about him, whether in her there's a pensiveness, a sort of stillness, of contemplation, of perhaps realizing that all her fears have come true. With this gentleman, it's the opposite. What we are looking at is somebody in action. We are seeing more detail, aren't we? So again, it's how obviously the light catches the metal, because obviously with it being shaped metal, it has sort of multiple sides, as you might say. So obviously as the light casts across, as I literally move my head, because I've always got a headlamp, you can probably see that light moving now. Obviously as we come in closer, as we move further away, then again the light will change. As I move round, as I look down, as I look up. So if I go down and look up again, you'll get something like a mottled experience now, less kind of detail. So let's go off and find. So people, as I say, have asked me, what is my view of ghosts? Do you believe in ghosts? And I think the answer for a long, long time was, I kind of hoped so. I was sort of seeing a ghost would be really cool. A friend of mine claimed to have experienced something when I used to work in the stables. My friend had a farm, and he claimed one night when I was not too far away, he'd seen somebody walking past with shadows casting across the light of the yard, but I didn't see anything that night. My experience came back in, let's say, 2017. I'd been working very hard, but I'd kind of basically burnt myself out with work and travel and so forth. I was working for the cricket, and I was kind of done in. I need to take some kind of time off, and I'd lost my dad not that long before. The money had come through, and I decided to buy a property, which is now the House of Crooked End, the holiday let that I run, and it's a Victorian house, late Victorian, dates from about 1880. And I was kind of working in there. It was winter, it was dark, it was cold. I didn't have masses of money to do it up, so I was trying to do it on the cheap. I didn't have much heating. I didn't have really a budget for heating. So I kind of largely worked in low light and the cold. And there was a room that I was working in. I call it front bedroom right, which is a silly name for it, which happens as 2 bedrooms at the front, a left and a right. So I call it front bedroom right. And I worked in there for a number of weeks, decorating it. And I kept getting a sense, I couldn't really put my finger on it, but of I wasn't alone. That there was something or somebody that was there. And it's very tenuous. And I have to admit, in telling this story at that time, because I had burned out, and that's not a pleasant thing for those that experienced it, they'll know what I'm talking about. It wasn't just I feeling a bit tired. I couldn't operate. I needed complete downtime. I found in this kind of decorating and renovation, I kind of found my sort of way back to functioning. So there was a very, very strong part of me that felt that this is part of what's been going on. That this was the stress and the pressure was making me have this sense of not being alone. But it kept happening. It didn't happen anywhere else in the house, just in this one room, in the same place, in the same alcove area. And eventually I decided to basically tell somebody, just see how they responded. And I knew it was somebody that claimed to be very attuned, to these things. So I said, look, I'm not going to say what I think. I'm going to give you the key. I want you to go in, have a look round, and you tell me what, if anything, you experience. So she did. And she came back out the first time and said, definitely felt something. Not sure what it is. It felt very crowded, very oppressive. And in particular, in the bedroom, in the upstairs bedroom by the fire, I felt a really kind of strong sense. So I thought, okay, this is kind of interesting, sort of confirming what I'd already thought. So then decided to call in somebody who claims themselves to be a seer, through a friend of a friend, a modest sum. I asked this person to come in. And before they walked to the threshold, I was there this time, they made straight up the stairs, went to the room, and stood in the place where I'd been getting these experiences. This, by the way, is Thomas Cook, not the travel agent, but rather the rather nutty inventor of a fabulous telescope. And of course, looking at telescopes is quite literally looking at ghosts, isn't it? When we see the stars, we're seeing the light that was emitted thousands, if not millions of years ago. The night sky is quite literally populated with ghosts, and with the better telemetry, we're able to see more and more of the past. So the stars are quite literally ghosts, aren't they? They are the embers, often, of burning stars, things that don't even really exist, but it's taken so long for that light to come to our world that with telescopes we're quite literally looking at the ghosts in the sky. So consequently, this person, he was a Victorian inventor of a telescope based here in York, and it's a really lovely sort of sculpture. Move on a little bit, it's time to get on. Lights going down, and I want to just try and capture a couple more. So this person then advised me that the best thing that I could possibly do was to have her come in and perform a ceremony, I'll guess that you say, to make the ghosts feel welcome. I was told the ghost was a young woman. It was likely that this woman, this girl, had been a maid. It's a fairly large house, not a huge house, but large enough to have had a single maid, perhaps to help out, maybe two. I was told it was a girl in a late teenage that was there in the house. So this kind of friend of a friend came down. She burnt wood. I've no idea what it was. She went around the house with a kind of smoking ember and did some incantations and did whatever it is that they do. And I was told that that would be the end of it. And I must admit, from my point of view, I didn't ever again experience that particular sensation, which was incredibly strong. I can't begin to tell you how strong this sensation was. I'm not merely saying like a bit of a sense. I'm like being absolutely convinced that somebody was there. Every time I turned around, I felt that they were there in the corner of my, standing over me, standing next to me. Incredibly powerful. What did start to happen was we started to get reports from guests. Firstly, there was a message left on our Alexa. You know, the Google, is it Google thing? Anyway, the Hey Alexa thing. And it was a message saying, reminder, somebody recorded in the early hours of the morning, remind me to tell the ghosts, tell the hosts, this house is haunted. That was the first of these. The second was a message from a lady who stayed in the house with her husband, and her husband was somebody who was incredibly skeptical about ghosts, that was kind of known for being extremely dismissive, who got up in the middle of the night to go to the loo, so had to go down, if you like, the hallway to the toilet on the end. As he came out of the hallway, he saw a young woman in what he thought was a long white pinafore dress, going through into the front bedroom. But actually she passed through the wall, completely freaked him out. And the reason she passed through the wall, the reason I call it front bedroom right, is actually it was a very large bedroom, subsequently cut in two. But where the wall is now is originally where the original doorway would have been. So it seems that he saw the maid passing through into the main bedroom that night. And apparently couldn't sleep. He came back and he was completely in pieces because of this. And so she came back. This lady's very nice. I don't want to cause trouble, but I need to tell you about this because my husband is not the slightest orientated towards supernatural. But he couldn't sleep. He was white. The hairs in his arms were standing up. He fervently believed that he'd seen a ghost. So I was always determined, even though this is the peacock, by the way, in case you're wondering what we're looking at. This is one of the famous peacocks that used to inhabit the gardens. So again, the ghosts of the past. The peacocks that are no longer with us, no longer part of the garden, used to be such a part of York, displaying itself, wonderful kind of finery. So I was kind of very determined. I thought the easiest thing people said to me, in fact, the first person who came in said, "Oh, you should market this. People will come and stay here." And I thought that would be just daft. The last thing I want to do is I had no idea what you might be dealing with, but I certainly wasn't going to market it and have people coming with contraptions and metal boxes and heaven knows whatever else and potentially create havoc. Who knew what it was? Whoever that person was, they'd been there for a long time. And it was, I didn't want to kind of disturb that kind of fragile piece, as you might say, with the ghost. The second person told me that they believed that she was sentient. In other words, it wasn't simply a flickering photography. There was a sense of purpose about the maid. But it seemed after that things calmed down. There was no further reports, no further sightings, nothing else from the guests to say that he experienced anything out of the ordinary. And it stayed this way for about another, I would say, probably 3 months. And then, I think I changed an energy supplier. It wasn't something I chose to get deliberately. And as part and parcel of it, they sent me a free security camera. Like, a Nest thing, if you've seen those things. To plug in. I thought, great, I'll put it by the back door, because always slightly vulnerable with the backyard and everything. So I'll put it by the back door. And when the guests weren't in, I would then switch on the security camera and it's reached to my phone, so that consequently, if there's anybody trying to get into the house or do anything untoward, I would be alerted. So anyway, a couple of weeks later, maybe a week later, I don't know, not too long after that, I woke up in the middle of the night and my phone was gently buzzing. I had it on kind of low vibrate rather than alarm. I don't wake up at everything. And I picked up bleary-eyed, it's the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, and I picked up my phone, and I pressed the button to bring up the live feed. And at first, I thought, why is my youngest daughter at the house? What is she doing? I looked in the picture, and there was a girl staring back at me, who at first I thought was my daughter. And then I realised, no, she had long, blonde hair. I kind of woke up. And I hit then the record button to try and capture this. At that moment, there was a flash of light and what looked like then like a firefly. So I've got the video clip of this. Floated across the screen, but in the most bizarre sort of pattern of flight. Disappeared. I've still got that video. I'll put it up on YouTube. Not YouTube, on Facebook. You can have a look at it. If I remember. Most odd. But it felt to me like I was looking right into the face of this girl. This serving girl. I want to call her a maid. Whatever her particular role was. Had presumably been attracted by the light. Because in the darkness, of course, the security camera would have had some form of light, a blinking light. And I think she was stood in front of it. And it was enough to trigger the camera. And so when I woke up and looked at this, I believe that for the first time, after all that time of feeling and experiencing the presence, for the first time, the only time, I believe I looked face to face at a ghost. So whether you believe that, whether you believe I was dreaming, whatever your view, you're perfectly entitled to hold that. I'm not trying to say you should believe it. All I'm saying is that I believe it. That is my recollection of what happened to me. But I'm not going to lie, I wasn't in the best frame of mind, but certainly by that stage, I was certainly a lot stronger than I had been. But that's the story. Perhaps why I've been a bit reluctant to tell it until now, because to do so I have to acknowledge, I suppose, my own vulnerability at that stage. Didn't really know 100% what was real, what was imagined. But by the time the video, I can guarantee it was real. So anyway, there we go. That's my story. That's my brush with ghosts. We're coming to the end. I believe my sister called me the day after she died. Wow. So here we have Ghosts of History. Dick Turpin brandishing his pistols, shouting, "No doubt stand and deliver." And beside him, tethered, his trusty steed, of course, Black Bess. We know a lot of this is fiction. It was in a book called Rockwood that rather kind of romanticised the work of Charles Dickens, of Dick Turpin. He was really something of a rogue. There's a timeless quality to his story. It's a romantic element, isn't there? Of the outlaw, the man who accepts that capture is going to result in death, of execution, but living the life of an outlaw is something beguiling for them. So, as a highway robber, he haunted the roads of England, terrifying the rich and the powerful. They would be his next victims, and robbed of their valuables, of their jewels, of their money. There we have Dick Turpin, hanged in York in April 1739, and again portrayed here in the gardens. And again, I'm really enjoying the way that the light just works absolutely beautifully. I think one or two have been put away. I've been walking around, and some of them that I thought were in place have gone. I'll tell you there's one last. We're going to look at the nun before we go. What time? I'm a little bit late, but if we've got time for just one more, we're going to look at the nun. We'll perhaps catch the bear on the way along. So the bear, by the way, in case you've still seen it previously, there was an escaped bear. So obviously, I've talked many times about the peacocks used to wander the gardens. There used to be a menagerie here. These are pleasure gardens, for the kind of wealthy, sort of time-rich Victorians that were going to come out promenading. They would love to see fantastic things. And so there was a menagerie here. And within it was a bear. And unfortunately, this bear had a propensity to escape or wasn't looked after terribly well. And so consequently, it wasn't unusual. There were several accounts of the bear escaping and creating havoc in the city centre. So it's lovely that he has been brought in as new for 2023. Is the bear. He doesn't have a name, which I'm afraid to say I've forgotten. I'll try and find that out for next year, because I'm sure he'll be back. Isn't it fantastic? I'm guessing he's a grizzly, but I couldn't say precisely what kind of bear he is, whether a brown bear, grizzly bear. You may know. He's got a bit of a paunch on him. Looks like he's been tucking in. But isn't he wonderful? So, we'll really kind of miss these. I think it's such a lovely thing to happen in York. And York, we're spoilt. We've got this fabulous, obviously, great array of historic artifacts and buildings and so forth. But just it creates new ways of seeing, new ways of kind of looking. And I think what's great as well is it gets, sorry, it's very dark, I think, it gets locals out and about, because the one thing that you tend to find, as in pretty a lot of places, and I'm sure it's much the same wherever you guys live, is locals take things for granted. So I think anything that gets local people out looking at the city again afresh through kind of new eyes is wonderful. So whether it be the ice sculpture that we'll have in January, we're out doing that again. Coming round again, the year just turns so fast, doesn't it? or the Ghost in the Garden. These things that really sort of capture the imagination of the locals are brilliant. So you can see now, we probably can't see actually, rather, how much the light has gone down. So we're looking at the St Mary's Abbey. And what's lovely over here is, I'm going to see a nun. So from the convent, there was no convent to our knowledge in these grounds. Of course, nuns may well have visited and spent time with the monks. It's entirely possible, entirely plausible. But here we have, so I think for the last sort of time today, the last of our ghosts, the last for this year. Isn't that light brilliant? I've really got the head torch. Really works, doesn't it? Then there's a stretch that rope out as far as we can. I'll get rid of this because it's not raining anymore, so I don't need that. And so here we have, how well you can see there, you've got, they're not rows really, but you know the knotted ropes that they have for their vows. She's got those. She's got a crucifix about her neck. She's got the head cowl on, and she's kind of looking up in contemplation. And again, we've got the long sort of flowing robes of the monastic orders, obviously covered from head to foot, partly for warmth, secondly, of course, to ensure that everything wasn't about the body, it was about the soul. So obviously it's not the fancy dresses of a lady or a fashionable lady. This is pure sort of functional clothing. I'm just going to step over here. If I get told off, but I just want to get close in just for that, because I think that she is absolutely fabulous. So again, you can see the layers. You see the cross, the headdress. Isn't she wonderful? The ghost want to prove right. I think you're right there, yeah. So there we go. Our final ghosts, the gardens of 2025. And of course, this may well be the Grey Lady. The Grey Lady, of course, the story you'll know from nearby here, the theatre, the story of a novice monk that may have been caught in flagrante, may have got herself pregnant with a lover, but equally, it's likely that the story was that she believed she'd been visited by an angel, and that the Mother Superior was so horrified by her story that again she had her bricked up, left to die, creating the famous and the fabulous story of the Grey Lady of Theatre Royal, who haunts the dressing room behind the dress circle, a place where many actresses have simply said, like I felt, not alone, somebody else there. His presence, can't define it, can't put your finger on it, just that sense of, I'm not alone. But a maliciousness, not a friendly presence, there's a malevolence about the Grey Lady. Although here in a face, appears to be a face of peace. So maybe it's not the Grey Lady. But she's most often encountered by the theatre staff, who of course need to communicate with one another during performances, and do so with the headsets and the microphones in hushed tones. Communicate between the lighting, the sound, stage manager, etc. And one of those oft reported claims is a female voice coming through the headphones over and over with three simple words: let me out. Let me out. So whether this is a portrayal of the Grey Lady or simply a nun, a novice nun, here for penance, to take instruction from the brothers, I guess we don't know. We don't need to know. It's not important who she is. What's important, I think, is that the sculpture, the artwork speaks to us, that it says something about the human condition. And the most important thing, of course, about us as humans is knowing we're not here forever. We're all going to die. And of course, what's fascinated people from the earliest times, as long as there's been people, there's been storytellers, seeking to answer the question, what happens when we die? Thank you so much for joining me here for the third time with the ghosts in the gardens, in the city. I've really enjoyed having you here. I don't want to go any longer. I don't want to run over other people's tours. So I'm going to say thank you so much from York. It's getting rather cold as well, so I'm not going to lie. I'm quite happy, I think, to go inside now and to try and get a bit of warmth. But I'll leave you just one last lingering look at the lady. So Garuda, such a lovely time finishing the London Seance Society. If I can back in the atmosphere. Well, I'm glad it's brought that for you. I'm glad that we can connect on this rather cool and wet afternoon here in York. And hopefully I've left something to remember me by. So thank you. I was John. So do give me a follow on YouTube. My channel is Exploring Yorkshire with John. Used to be all points north, and now Exploring Yorkshire or Visiting Yorkshire is my kind of handle. Do look me out. Give me a follow. And that'll be fantastic. They're lovely sculptures. We'll be back again next year. I'm sure. I can't imagine that they will pull them away. But isn't it wonderful to show them at night? In fact, I may well show a clip or two of this to the Museums Trust and just remind them of how fantastic. They could really do one evening, I think, get all the garden lit up and then charge people to come in and have a look. I think they could do really, really well. But that's for another conversation for another day. I'm glad that you've enjoyed it. It's been wonderful. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your generosity and your support. Of course, it really does help. I know there's a lot of tours on right now, so you can't support everybody, but for those that can, who are in a position to do so, I do thank you greatly for your kindness, your consideration, your support, and keeping Humphrey in snacks. So let me just try and go somewhere where I'm not going to blind you with this light. You can see me, and we can say our goodbyes for today. So my head torch there is rather blinding you all. So it's almost pitch black here now, as you can see, without the head torch. It's incredible how much the light has come down in the time we've been here together. But no, it's time well spent. There's a light over there, so if we just head over there towards that light, then we can do our adieus. I don't know, I'm next touring. I haven't really thought about what I'm doing. I think we're going to go back and do a Dales Village next weekend if I can. I think up Midland or Reeth, I'm not quite sure which. So if you've enjoyed the village tours, I hope to be out and about next weekend. And then before we know it, we're on to Christmas tours, Christmas markets and everything kind of goes with that. So there'll be plenty to see. We're back in Nares, I think, for an after dark tour, Christmas markets tour. So lots to look forward to. And thank you for a great tour. Thank you, Linda. I thought the light worked, so I won't try and blind you there. I'll just switch him off. Incredible things, aren't they? Little head torches. They work real nice. So thank you. That was lovely. Everybody who's joined me, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again very soon. So thank you from York, and goodbye.